exclusively on ESPN Plus. UFC 313, Saturday. Reigning light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira defends his title against number one contender Magomed Ankalaev, and an explosive lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Pazzi. UFC 313, Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Buy it on ESPNPlus.com/PPV.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Like a lot of great art, the following program contains nudity, so viewer discretion is advised.
This is the Classic Guitar Rock Daily Update. All the classic rock news of the day. With your host, Jeremy Lunnan.
All right. Hello. We're doing this a little later than usual, but I for sure wanted to do an update today. Today is Tuesday, August the 27th, 2024. Right out of the gate, I want to talk about Stevie Ray Vaughan. 34 years ago today, we lost Stevie Ray Vaughan, helicopter crash. I've gone through several, what's the word I'm looking for? Several phases of my music fandom, right? I'm a guitarist. I've played guitar for years. I've played in dad bands and cover bands and stuff since my high school days. I was in radio at the time. I was on the air when this happened. And so let me talk about that, just remembering that. And it seems like it was just yesterday. So I was working at Magic 95, CHR, what they call Contemporary Hit Radio, is a top 40 station in Lawton, Oklahoma. At the time, I worked with a guy named Rick Walker, Rick in the Morning. And at this particular time, I'd come in early and do the news. I was Rick's news guy. And then I'd work the midday shift after. So I'd come in early. They were long days. I'd come in at like 6, do the news with him. And then my shift was like 9 to 2 or something. So long day. Well, this particular morning, any of you that have worked at a radio station, you'll know about this. You have an AP wire, right? So when you talk about news coming over the wire, you literally have a little, at the time, it looked like a fax machine, right? It was a dot matrix printer, and the AP news wire, was be in the back of the newsroom or the back of your studio somewhere, and would just be all day just clicking out stuff from the AP. Your weather would come across there. Local news would come across. Well, I remember that morning as I was doing the news, we were getting stuff come across the clicker. And people don't remember this, right? But there was about a 2 or 3 hour lag before we knew that Stevie Ray had died. And in fact, we were getting AP reports, just kind of one right after another. The very first reports were a helicopter has crashed with members of Eric Clapton's band on board. And so the first thought was people were speculating that Clapton might have gone down in this helicopter crash, right? And this was going on for like a couple hours. We're still waiting for more information. Members of Eric Clapton's band, there's been a horrible crash, several fatalities. They talked about the band had played the night before at Alpine Valley, And, you know, Eric Clapton had performed with Robert Cray and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimmy Vaughan and who else. It was a big show. And so all of this was going on. And so we were all waiting for this information. Had Eric Clapton died? I mean, we knew members of his band had died, which is a tragedy, right? But people didn't know them, right? So everyone was like, has Eric Clapton died? And then all of a sudden, an hour later, a couple hours later, we get a report that says Stevie Ray Vaughan has been killed in this helicopter crash, along with members of Eric Clapton's band. Now, the story is famously members of Clapton's band, and I think Jimmy Vaughan had seats on this helicopter to fly them back to the hotel. So where this concert venue was, is this in Michigan? I should know that. I think it's in Michigan, Alpine Valley, whatever. So you could drive up there and it took you a while to get there, or you fly to in the helicopter. It's a 15-minute drive flight back to the hotels in town. Stevie Ray was not feeling well. You couldn't tell from the performance because from every indication he played, that was one of his best shows. He played awesome, right? But he had a sore throat, wasn't feeling well, and he asked Jimmy if he could have his seat in the helicopter. And Jimmy said, sure. So he gives Stevie the seat. Stevie gets on board with a bunch of members of Clapton's entourage. They fly. There's a lot of fog. You know the rest of the story. Helicopter flies into the hillside, kills everyone on board. Tragic story. I'm working at it. And by the time it finally broke, it was after 9 a.m. So now I'm doing my shift and I'm working at a top 40 station. We didn't really play Stevie Ray's music at the station. So what did I do? I go and I grab David Bowie's Let's Dance, right? That's the only track we played at this top 40 station. This is 1990, right? The only song that was still in our old rotation, right? We played Let's Dance by David Bowie. So I grabbed that out. This is still on vinyl. Cue up the record, right? And, you know, I had said, hey, we just have this news. Stevie Ray Vaughan has just been killed. Here's a tune featuring Stevie Ray Vaughan. This is Let's Dance by David Bowie. Played it, whatever. Well, here's the thing about Stevie Ray Vaughan. And think 1983, right? It's 1983. I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm a metalhead, man. I love the metal. 83, you know, Randy Rhoads had just died the year before, but I'm big time into Ozzy, big time into Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Rush, huge Rush fan. So that was my bread and butter. I remember I'm in my room, probably playing my guitar. That's what I did. And my older brother says it was a Saturday night, evening, whatever. My brother's like 3 years older than me. He plays in the dad band with me. He's a bass player. So he says, hey, Jeremy, come out and check out this guy on Austin City Limits. So I go out, and that's the first time I'd seen Stevie Ray Vaughan. 1983, Austin City. I think it was 83.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai Iced Coffee Flavored Creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Dude, okay, here's this guy. He's dressed like Clint Eastwood, the man with no name, right? From Fistful of Dollars, right? And he's got the total, I mean, I'm like, who is this guy? And he's just tearing it up. And I had never seen I mean, I knew of blues, right? I knew what the blues was, but I'd never seen. That gave me a whole new idea of what the blues was, right? And he was awesome. And then shortly after that, they started to run videos on MTV of like Cold Shot, some of his songs. And I was bit by the Stevie Ray Vaughan bug bad. I mean, that really kind of turned me around, because I was up to that point. It had always been metal. It was all about the metal. And I want to say hello to my friend, Frank. I could tell you stories about Frank. Frank, I don't know if you remember this. My junior year in high school, you're a sophomore. Okay. We're in Mrs. Shea's computer science class on those Tandy machines. Do you remember this? And I don't know if you remember, but at this time, you might have been a junior and I might have been a senior. I don't remember. I remember I had spiky hair and I had pink Converse high tops. And you don't know that I know this, Frank, but I do know this. You looked at my shoes and you laughed. You laughed at my shoes. Do you remember that, Frank? Do you remember laughing at my shoes? I remember. So, Frank, by the way, is a very successful DJ. You're in Dallas, aren't you, Frank? I think you're still in the Dallas area. Frank is a phenomenal musician. And I remember you, Frank, first as a violinist playing the violin, but now Frank plays guitar, drums, super talented, way more talented than me. So thank you so much for tuning in. He doesn't remember laughing at my pink shoes. I saw it. I saw you out of the corner of my eye, laughing at my shoes, but, but I'm glad to have you here. Yes, Frank is in Dallas. DJ Love, right? Did I get that right? If you're in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex and you have a chance to go see DJ Love, you got to do it. He's very good at what he does. Just a great, talented guy, even though he laughed at my shoes. So Frank, you didn't know I was going to make you part of the show. Thank you for tuning in. But yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of turned me around as far as opening up some new ideas. Speaking of DFW, right? That was Stevie. Well, originally he was from DFW. Austin was kind of where he gravitated to, as many of the blues artists did. But Stevie Ray, obviously huge in Texas and then became huge everywhere else. But I don't think people realize, especially if you're younger, right? Especially if you didn't really know about Stevie Ray Vaughan until after he had already died. After his death, and maybe even slightly before he died, when he was getting more and more recognition and stuff, it kind of started a whole new movement. Okay. You had guys like Joe Bonamassa. You can go back and see footage of Joe Bonamassa when he's like 12 years old, totally dressing like Stevie Ray, right? You had Johnny Lang and Kenny Wayne Shepherd and so many of these blues rockers were emboldened by Stevie Ray Vaughan. Frank says his museum used to be right here in the building I live in. That is awesome. That is really cool. But Stevie Ray was a very important figure for me, for many other folks. And the early 90s, and Frank would attest to this, right? The early 90s, the blues rock, that was a big, and it's still a pretty big scene. But man, early 90s, it was huge. And Stevie Ray ushered a lot of that in. I love this quote from his brother, Jimmy Vaughan, said, Stevie always sounded like he was breaking out of jail. And that's exactly what he sounded like, man. Just a great player. And I remember literally Stevie Ray Vaughan, don't laugh when I say this, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Randy Rhoads, and John Denver are the three celebrities that have hit me the hardest. I mean, Eddie Van Halen dying was sad. Neil Peart dying was very sad. But these three, because I was really into Stevie Ray. I had just bought In Step. I was cranking that, blasting that all. We didn't play it at the top 40 station I worked at, but at home, that's what I listened to all the time. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Randy Rhoads, John Denver, all tremendous musicians that had tremendous impact on me. And I can't believe it has been 34 years since his passing. So today, especially, I just want to pay tribute to the great Stevie Ray. What a great performer. Man, guy was just phenomenal. And you always wonder when we lose someone too young, what would they be doing if they were still here? What did we miss out on? And of course, the irony and the tragedy of Stevie Ray, he struggled with substance abuse for years and years. And finally, right before In Step and right before Family Style, the album he did was his brother Jimmy, he had completely cleaned up. The last year of his life, completely sober, completely cleaned up. And I remember seeing him on Austin City Limits. I think it was in 89, maybe early 90, but it was the last time he was on Austin City Limits. He looked better. I mean, you could tell that he had been through hell and had come back out the other side, right? He was a new man, and you could see it. You could feel it. You could hear it in the interviews he gave, and very powerful. And then the sad irony is that he died shortly after really getting his life in order. So just a tragedy, but man, what a great contribution he made. I love Stevie Ray, and today especially, I just want to pay tribute to him, and I miss him. I still miss him. Got a few news items I want to talk about really quick. This one, just because it cracked me up. Marty Friedman. Okay, full disclosure, I'm gonna just throw this out there. He's another one of those guys. I've mentioned guys like this before, artists that I really dig, but it's hard for me to get into their music, and I don't want to offend anyone when I say this. Marty Friedman is one of these guys I love. I see interviews with him. I think he's awesome. I'm just not a huge Megadeth fan. I don't hate them, but I just have never been a huge fan of their music. But I've always liked Marty Friedman. Anytime I see a video with him or an interview with him, I always watch it. Well, I was not aware of this, but he was briefly considered as a guitarist in his favorite band, Kiss. Okay. Kiss reached out to Marty and said, "Hey, would you be interested in auditioning, to be the lead guitarist in Kiss?" Think about the time frame. This is probably after Vinny. I don't know. This is probably in the late 80s. I'm trying to think. Mark St. John was in there shortly, and they had to get rid of him pretty quick. So I don't know where in the pecking order he would have fallen. But he says, quote, "When they were changing guitar players a long time ago, I got a call from Kiss's people." This is an interview he did with Sam Ash Music, by the way. And I'm reading it from Ultimate Classic Rock. They say, "Do you think you'd be interested in auditioning for Kiss?" And he's like, "Tell me when and where." "Yeah, absolutely. I'd be interested in that." He was ecstatic because this is like his band, right? Guys, the guitarists that were coming into their own in the 80s and 90s, 95% of them grew up Kiss fans. That's just, Kiss is the band that launched 1 million guitars. So he's just stoked about this. So the Kiss folks are asking him some questions, right? Just, it's the pre-audition interview, right? "You don't have any facial hair, do you?" "No." "You've got long hair, right?" "Yeah." "You're skinny, right?" "Yeah." "And you're over 6 feet tall?" "Oh, that was a problem. He was 5'7". He's like, or quote, "I'm like, what? I'm 5'7.5", but I'll have an operation. I'll do something. He'd do anything to be in the band. But unfortunately, the height issue was non-negotiable. He says, quote, they were like, oh, I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. He said he was just crushed, super bummed. But he says, I totally get it. The Kiss guys, Gene and Paul, how many Jewish guys are 6 feet tall without boots? Why did it have to be that way? But he says, I totally get it, though, because it would look funny if there was this short guy playing lead guitar. So I totally get it, but I would have done anything. If there was an operation available at the time, I would have done it. So the time he almost got into Kiss, but he missed it by this much. But, you know, Peter Criss, he was like 5'7", 5'8". He wasn't tall. But I guess they figured he's sitting behind the drums. Wasn't a problem. Okay, and Frank, if you're still watching, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. And I am not bringing this up to be snarky at all. I'm just being, I have a blind spot, guys. I have a blind spot in the 90s. I just was not, I worked in radio till 95, but much of that time I was working in oldies. I was working at an oldies station. I wasn't keeping track of much new music. Any new music I did consume was actually blues, right? It was Kenny Wayne Shepherd. It was Johnny Lang. That was in the early 90s. I was totally still in that Stevie Ray Vaughan phase, right? So I'm listening to all the blues stuff. I just completely missed. I wasn't listening to new music. Well, news is broke that Oasis is going to, I guess you can call it, have a reunion. The two brothers, whatever their names are, they're doing shows. I don't know when they're doing sales. August, let's see, tickets go on sale Saturday, August 31st at 8 a.m. Ireland and 9 a.m. in the UK. So these are not until the summer of 2025. So this is next summer. I don't know if they're going to be recording new music. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. So here's my question. Frank, are you listening? Is it worth it for me to go do a deep dive in Oasis? Champagne Supernova, is that Oasis? I'm going to see what Frank says. The 90s was the most exciting time for me as a DJ, but I did listen to a lot of 90s rock. Personally, I like Blur more than Oasis. So so Frank, are you saying it is worth it to me to do a deep dive into Oasis? Is that time well spent? Is that what you're saying? Oh, now he says, he's thinking about it. I see smoke coming out of his ears in his picture. So I am honestly asking the question because all I know of Oasis are the Wonderwall. Was that the hit? Frank says, I don't think you'll dig that deep with Oasis, but I could be wrong. Now, I love the Beatles, right? I've heard people call them a Beatles tribute. I've heard all these cracks. And it's easy for me to pile on people making fun of Oasis. And I've seen all the memes about the Oasis hairdos and all of that stuff. But I'm honestly asking, do you like Oasis? Would you recommend that I spend the time to go in and listen to more than the 2 or 3 hits that I've heard on the radio? Some people love them and think they're one of the best bands of the 90s. And I'm claiming ignorance. I just never really I didn't listen to much music in the 90s. So I'm just throwing it out there. You can always email me, classicguitarrock@mail.com, classicguitarrock@mail.com. Frank, thank you for chiming in. Any of the rest of you, any thoughts you have, I'm open to that. I'm not trying to be snarky. You know, I've posted a few snarky memes on X about Oasis, but let's be honest, I just do that for clickbait, right? We all do that. But I honestly would love your opinion on Oasis and if it's worth me spending the time to check out their music. Here, I'll give Frank the final word. He says, I like them, but I definitely listen to them and then make a decision. I never found them that great, but not bad. Okay. So I'll check, I'll see, and then I'll come up with an informed opinion about it. I want to thank Frank for chiming in, and I want to thank the rest of you for watching. We're up to over 65,000 followers on X. If you aren't following us on X, please do so. We also have the world's worst YouTube channel. Check that out. You can follow us on Facebook. And as always, you can email us, classicguitarrock@mail.com. And the final plug, if you aren't listening to Classic Guitar Rock Radio, what's up? Come on. Check it out. Go to our website, which is just classicguitarrock.com. You can click on either the podcast button or the radio button. Radio 24/7. It's a great radio station. I'm just saying, check it out. Thanks for tuning in. We'll do this all again tomorrow. Live long and prosper. See you. Bye, Frank. Take care.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Thanks for listening. You can email Jeremy at classicguitarrock@mail.com.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Tune in each weekday for the Classic Guitar Rock Daily Update.